Hi guys, just a quick rundown of photogrammetry on a car related example. So step one is to take a bunch of sequential photos. So each photo differs slightly in position and angle, but sort of follows along a bit of a zigzag path up and down along the surface you're trying to capture. So for the most part, was trying to capture as much of the dash and center console as possible. So those are the photos I've got there. There's 240 in total. Generally speaking, it sort of depends on the object and how complicated it is as to how many photos, but 1 to 400 photos is a good sort of range for what you need. Then in the software, what it does is it compares the points of comparison. So on the little buttons here, it can compare, okay, this is the corner of the button in this photo, this is the corner of the button from an angle that's completely different in another photo, and once it compares enough photos, it knows how to put that point in 3D space. So this is the basically the alignment point cloud, so it's reasonably dense for what it is, but once all the cameras are aligned, it will place those in the scene. So each one of these blue panels is one of the images. If one of the images is too blurry to get data from, you can select it individually and delete it out. But that is all the camera angles that I took. It's good to take them from a range of distances as well. So mostly did that out of this side of the car. Ideally would have done a bit more on the other side as well, but it picked things up fine. So once you've got your alignment point cloud and it's aligned the photos, you then click the button and walk away for many hours to generate the dense point cloud. So this point cloud that we're looking at here, according to the stats on the side, is 388 million points, give or take. That is stupidly high. I'm guessing it's not showing me all of the points, but the maximum of points that my system can handle, sort of thing. But if we keep zooming in, we'll keep seeing that there are more and more points that it's found. So again, I'll zoom out. So yes, obviously the higher res your photos and the more of them you take and the more matches it finds, the denser and denser this point cloud gets. You can set it to a maximum. I've deliberately cranked the settings just to see how high this would go, and particularly how high it would go on my machine with 32 gig of RAM and a decent graphics card before it broke. But very happy with the point cloud at that stage, because the more accurate the point cloud, obviously the more accurate the mesh you can generate from it. So from here, there's two options. You can either generate the actual mesh from that point cloud, and it will bring it back down to a number of polys that your machine can actually handle. I tried this with this point cloud, and 32 gig of RAM was not enough. There are machines specifically built for photogrammetry and large data sets, obviously, that might have more like 128 gig of RAM or higher. But yes, this is very much a how much money you got kind of scenario for how intense you can build the machine. However, there is a intermediate step where it generates depth maps, so a bunch of large textures from the various reference points, and that's part of the process to generate this point cloud. So you can actually these days use the depth map to generate the mesh instead of the actual point cloud. So this gets you most of the way for the accuracy and uses a lot less RAM. So in that sense, this machine was perfectly fine to generate a mesh from that much data. It didn't max out the RAM, and I am happy with the result. So this is the textured model. Very, very happy with how this came out. Obviously, there are areas that didn't come out exactly. Anywhere that was highly shadowed or I didn't get the camera in close enough, it sort of punched a hole in. Similarly, on the top here, there is a gap That is where most of the reflection from the direct sunlight was. If it was more of an overcast day, I'm guessing that would have come out cleaner. But given the shape of it, there is enough there that I would be able to trace that back and fill it in. Things like the chairs, the door, and the gear stick and brake, I wasn't intending to capture that at all, but due to the nature of the process, obviously the photo will pick up anything in the surrounding area as well. So often you get a bunch of extra detail as a bonus. You can trim those points out of the point cloud if you wanted to only focus on generating this mesh and make things a little faster and a little less RAM. But again, was just trying to see how far I could push it. So yes, that is the model. That is 1.5 million faces. Again, you can set it to as many faces as your machine will handle, sort of thing. If I was to show you the model without the texture, so just model solid, you'll see that some surfaces are definitely cleaner than others. This is quite detailed in most places. Obviously, you wouldn't want to print this directly, but this is a accurate depiction of the actual surface quality. So things like the center console, where there was plenty of detail and not a whole lot of reflection from the sun, there are parts of this that are actually surprisingly quite usable. Where this comes in handy for me as a modeler preparing things for print is when I combine the two and have model and texture. You'll see that I can get right in on the CD player and almost read the font in most places, as well as seeing the various panel lines and that sort of thing. So combining it with mesh and texture as a reference point and having that all in 3D, you can see here that while the mesh might not be super clean for the interior of that console, the texture is for all the various important parts. So I would be able to use that as a base to accurately model any additions or modifications that are needed. Also, just worth mentioning that clearly I didn't have to put talcum powder on any of this to get it to scan accurately. There is still the same thing as with a scanner, where if it's completely reflective, it's going to give you issues because it's based on visually the photo comparing points of interest. So yes, certain objects would need to be covered. Also decided to put the calipers in here. Just having a little issue with the camera at the moment, but I do know that the measurements actually came out on the front of the caliper, so calibrating this scene should be really quite simple once I bring it into Blender. Anyway, that's a quick show of what's possible. Not necessarily a replacement for scanning, but a very robust option or plan B. Often very good to have that sort of thing in your back pocket, depending on the object and depending on the end use case.